everyone, welcome to These Guys Got Next, the NBA basketball podcast where we deliver our hot takes and analysis rather from the bench. I'm Elijah Fa'afiu. As always, I'm joined by Ravindu Pathirana, and there is plenty to unpack as always in the NBA. But first, our usual check-in. Rav, how are you doing? How's everything on your end?
Yeah, awesome, mate. Awesome. Looking forward to this episode. There's a lot to speak about, like you said. A lot of juicy topics. Yeah, how you doing?
Yeah, there is a lot to talk about as well. I'm fine. Well, considering that I picked a certain team to pick the NBA championship, I'm not as fine. So there's going to be a lot to talk about with this particular team. And actually, let's just dive right in. The Philadelphia 76ers, who unfortunately I did pick as the NBA champions in the preseason. They're currently 1-7. Very poor start from them. Are you surprised at all the way that Philly have sort of started things?
I was hoping they'd win more than one game, in all honesty, just off the back of what Tyrese Maxey was able to do last year. Just thought he could, carry the load a little bit more. But no, not surprised at all off this terrible start. I mean, like when you consider, Embiid, we'll talk about the suspension shortly, and PG being out with the hyperextension of preseason. Something I guess to take into consideration. We know, being Clippers fans, that load management is a big thing with PG, and Embiid being on the not playing back to backs as well as an issue. A lot of pressure will be on Maxi, but off the back of a hamstring injury, it'll take a bit of recovery to come back to who he is. And Tyrese Halliburton had a hamstring injury last year. Wasn't the same player. Not apples to oranges, but you can only hope and wait. I think I was just looking at the numbers in terms of minutes played on this team. Caleb Martin second in minutes, Kelly Oubre third, PG fourth, Drummond fifth, Lowry sixth, Eric Gordon seventh, and Yabusele eighth, and Reggie Jackson 12th. So all of these guys are over 28 years old. It's 82 games, long season. And looking at this list, what do you reckon Philly do in terms of getting them into a good position come playoff time to help them contend or even win?
I think out of all those minutes that on that Sixers team, I think the most important one is the fact that Maxey has played not only the most minutes on that team, but the most minutes in the league before his injury. And I think that comes into question whether Nick Nurse has put too much pressure on Maxey, and that's as a result it's sort of led to this hamstring injury. But to your question, I think the two guys I'm looking at here is Kelly Oubre and Caleb Martin, who I think are going to be key in helping Paul George out, who's still ramping back up from his knee injury, and Embiid set to come back this week. But if there's two guys on the bench or in the lineup who do need to help out, it's Caleb Martin and Kelly Oubre. I think age is definitely getting to a lot of these other guys like Drummond and Gordon and Lowry. They're all over 30, as you mentioned, and I think that's definitely taking a toll already, and there's still a long way to go. So I'm not sure how these veterans are going to stick it out. But on Paul George, as we mentioned, he did return earlier this week. That was a big return for Philly. Came back in the game against the Suns, rather. But he also returned for my game of the week, which was the Sixers visiting the Clippers. Paul George's return to LA. He got booed by the Clippers fans, by members of the Wall. Understandable, given he made the choice to leave LA. But I also think PG, it was his decision at the end of the day to, go after the money and go after what he felt he was worth. I guess from your point of view as as Clippers fans, how do you sort of feel about the response that PG got from Clipper Nation?
I think, yes, he did put the team on his back, with Kawhi being more injured than PG. When you look at it, both guys were terribly injured for us down the stretch for those 5 years. But he took us to the Western Conference like deeper than what we had in, I don't know, last 10 years or so, which was really nice to see. But again, understandable, the negotiations didn't go well, so I can understand how Clippers fans, being as passionate as they are, can have that saltiness to its.
I think a lot of it is deep rooted in the fact that we did give a lot to the Thunder when we acquired PG. We basically gave away our future, and our future is pretty much in Oklahoma City's hands. And look where OKC is now. And I think fans are feeling, you took us to a Western Conference Finals, but we could have gotten more out of this deal. So I think a lot of the dissension or the hatred that PG got during that game was coming from that. PG himself was quite underwhelming, 18-7-2. But I want to talk about the Clippers briefly, because someone who's really been a standout so far, other than James Harden, other than Zubac, who we've talked about, Norm Powell, professional scorer. How good has he been?
Just a bucket, man. That's unreal. Like on that game as well. Like because we talk about PG's return to LA, he had 78% field goal efficiency. Like, awesome, right? But then look at the other side. Norm had 26 on 80%. We shot 75% from three. That, like, pure bucket. And it kind of goes towards his point where he said they don't need PG. And he's making a valid case for it so far.
Addition by subtraction. That's what he
Yeah.
said during the off season, and it seems to have helped out because the Clippers are fourth in defensive rating right now. So when we got guys like Derek Jones Jr. and Chris Dunn, and these guys aren't going to get mentioned every day, but they should for how well they've been playing on defense. So the Clippers themselves have had a really solid start to the season. Good on the Clippers, but staying on Philly because there's a lot to unpack with this team. Joel Embiid banned for 3 games for shoving a reporter in the locker room. It was based off an opinion piece he wrote, which mentioned Embiid's family, tied into the fact that Embiid hasn't been suiting up in games. I guess what's sort of your quick take on that whole situation, knowing that he is going to make his season debut against the Knicks this week?
First things first, like, you can't touch family. I think that's really bad from the reporter. I guess I'll put the question back to you, Eli, in terms of, you work in the media and understanding like that was a boundary crossed. How did you gauge that interaction? I know, and they said he threw hands towards the reporter, but how do you think an athlete should balance maintaining professionalism off the back of, I guess, a poor tasting take by a reporter?
Yeah, I think both parties in question crossed the line in different ways. You already talked about the reporter mentioning family. That's a big no-no, especially when you're trying to tie that into condemning or attacking Embiid for the way he's set out for games this season. Embiid, however, he put his hands on someone. You just can't do that when you're an athlete and a part of the media. I think the whole part about being in the media is that you're meant to develop this relationship with athletes, and but also media have the right to interview athletes in the locker rooms or backstage. They get the access that no one else does. So it's sort of a privilege as a media member to be there. But it's also, as an athlete, the media's trying to help you out. I guess in this case that didn't help him beat out, but the media's there to put your story out there. And I think Embiid didn't go about it the right way. I think it could have been easier if you put the two of them in a room and sort of have some sort of mediation where the two sort of cleared the air a little bit, non physical. But there's definitely ways to handle that than putting your hands on someone. So, but yeah, as mentioned, Embiid looks like he's going to be back this week against the Knicks. Good timing considering that one of their big 3 is just returned, but also another one of the big 3 is on the sidelines with Tyrese Maxey. Yeah, the injury couldn't have come at a worse time, but I guess talk a little bit about Maxey and the way what his loss sort of means for Philly.
I think you put it really well. Like, he's played the most minutes in the NBA since we started. Yeah, that is a lot of pressure on him. And like, he's 24 years old, but as if with any athlete, overusage results in injuries. I think there was, I guess, too much pressure placed on him by the team because, like we spoke about, it is an age issue in terms of the role players. Yes, they're good veterans and role players, but age comes into consideration when we look at this as an 82 game season.
Yeah, I guess the one saving grace for Philly is that the Eastern Conference is terrible right now. Like, as of recording, there's only 2 teams with a winning record. That's the Cavs and the Celtics, and it's by some margin compared to who's in third. And the Sixers are only 3 games behind the current third place team, which I think is the Knicks. So the Sixers are still in it. They can still reach the playoffs. Be to come back this week against the Knicks, which means he's probably going to miss the game the next night against the Cavs because it's a back-to-back, and we know he's not going to play back-to-backs this season. So a lot needs to go right for Philly in that regard. So we'll move on to the rest of the Eastern Conference because a lot's been happening. The number 1 overall pick, Zachary Risachet, 33 points against the Knicks earlier this week. By far the best scoring output by a rookie this season. But I guess when you compare it to how this rookie class has been, probably hasn't been the best draft class, but we sort of knew that heading into the season.
Yeah, I think, yeah, absolutely, man. Like, there's it's lack of playing time. There's not a lot of rookies. I think from outside of Ricochet, maybe even Zach Edey over the last week when he had that massive outburst. Not a lot of them have played over 20 minutes in a game, which I know we know the league is getting talented. There are teams, competing more and more, even though some of the records don't show it. But yeah, this is not a great draft class. But I'm happy that Ricochet put up that 33 points. Just gives him a little bit of a confidence boost.
Yeah, and I think just on that draft class, I think there's not going to be a superstar. I don't think that comes out of this draft class, but I think there's going to be a lot of really solid, really good players out of this class, and we've seen in guys like Ryan Dunn and Jalen Wells over in Memphis, and Bob Carrington and Alex Sarr over at the Wizards, and Keyshawn George, and the opportunities they're getting. So it's not a great draft class by any means, but there's going to be a lot of really solid players that come out of it. Just on the Hawks, yeah, they've got a really nice core at the moment with Trae. I guess heading into the season, the Hawks couldn't really tank because they don't have their first round pick, so they were sort of left in no man's land. But the cast that they've put around Trae after DeJounte Murray's departure has played really well to start the season. Dyson Daniels, I think, has been a great compliment, particularly on defense. He recorded 7 steals the other day against the Pistons, which is a great defensive showing. They've got Jalen Johnson, who is still ever improving, and Shai as well, who it's going to be growing pains with them as a rookie, but he's going to have his flashes. They're definitely going to help him. I just wish they started Onyeka Okongwu over Clint Capella. I'm not really sure why Capella's still starting or why he's even in Atlanta still. He should probably be offered a contending team if teams need a big out there. And they still have DeAndre Hunter and Bogdan Bogdanovic injured as well. But yeah, it was quite funny. Did you watch their game against the Knicks, the Hawks, and what Trae had to say afterwards?
Yeah,
That
that was
rivalry.
that was entertaining. I mean, like that rivalry goes back a few years, and we love it. You know, it's awesome to see how he still kind of holds that holds that against him, like that little pettiness, if you may. Love to see it. Love to see this from Trae. What do you say? Like, hope these New York fans find their way to the exit real quick. Take your ass home.
Yeah, take your ass home. I mean, the league needs it. We need the sort
Mm,
of rivalries between players and teams. It's what
mm,
sells tickets. It's what gets people watching. So good on Trae Young, and
mm.
good to see his hatred for New York is still going strong. The Orlando Magic, we wanted to see how they were going without Paolo. Update: they're not doing too well. They've been 1-4 since Paolo went down. They did snap a 5-game losing streak by beating the Pelicans at home, but offensively they have struggled. They've dropped down to 29th, so second to last in the league since Paolo went down. I guess the one saving grace for them is their defense, and they're still a top 5 defensive team in the league, which has always been their identity. So I guess when they have that to fall back on, that keeps them competitive. So, but they're going to need guys like Franz and Jalen Suggs to really develop.
I think France and Jalen Suggs had a couple of had an outburst where they scored over 20 points apiece, but France really needs to step up and be that consistent option, especially with Paolo out for the remaining period of his injury.
Yeah, definitely, I definitely agree. And I guess before we move on completely, but I do want to give a shout out to Cade Cunningham because I watched the one of the games I watched at the weekend was the Pistons against the Hawks, and that end of the game with Cade Cunningham, a go-ahead bucket with 8 seconds left in the fourth quarter, a real difficult running left-hander over Dyson Daniels and Jalen Johnson, which, considering the length that those two guys have, that's quite a difficult shot to make, and then goes on to make the game-winning block on Onyeka Okongwu on the other end, and
Yeah.
recorded his third straight triple-double, tying Grant with Hill for the Pistons franchise record in terms of consecutive triple dubs. So I'm a big fan of Kate Cunningham, and I really hope he gets his flowers this season
Yeah,
because he deserves it.
100%, 100%. I think All Star. Can we go around All Star?
I mean, I called him as an all star in the preseason, so I'm hoping this is the year that it happens.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I'm just going to touch on real quick on the defensive play that he had. I know everyone focuses on the offense. Not a lot of people kind of look into defense. But that play, he was playing off the ball, and he was kind of cutting that passing lane out of the top of the key, and he was just made the timely defensive stop. That was really he was ready to go, and seeing that energy come across him off the shot that he made before to get the game winner. Yeah, I just want to say he was ready. That was all. I'm a big defensive guy, so that was really good to see how he was. Yeah, Isaiah Stewart went up for that block, but didn't get it. But then yeah, he came up and followed through. So that was really awesome to see.
Yeah, I guess considering how bad the East is, I mean, the Pistons can definitely put their name in the hat as a competitive team, and we know they're going to compete and day in and day out. So we'll see how things go for them. Moving on now to one of a great game that stood out this week: the Boston Celtics and the Golden State Warriors. At the time, they were two of the best teams in the league, or among two of the best teams in the league. The Celtics were without Jalen Brown, but the Warriors ended up coming away with the victory. I guess, what did you sort of take away from that particular matchup?
I'm just going to start off with something I read when I was watching the game, and then off the back of the highlights when we were doing the analyzing. Someone said we lost a brother but made a buddy. and it goes down to Buddy Hield. So that was really cool, man. Buddy Hield is just stellar, and something that I know you kind of look into these games and you start to kind of pick out these little things is how it was a battle of the coaches to start off with. Like, Steve Kerr came out the gate pulling Jason Tatum, making him really uncomfortable and really getting the ball off him. Like hyper aggressive. They used the likes of Moody's, the Kumingas. Even Wiggins was playing stellar defense. That was unreal to see. Like, I think it was about 3 minutes to go in the end of the first. Joe Mazzulla kind of, we kind of see how much of a savant he is, and it's a battle of the coaches, right? And he just goes changing from, okay, instead of getting my big to get the screen when the ball's in Tatum's at the start of the play, he brings up a shooter, which means the Warriors defense is more, I guess, reluctant to let go and give up an easy bucket. So I know that kind of stood out to me in the first quarter. Also, like, how Jason Tatum needs to be able to better himself in these situations when teams do double him if he's going to take that next step into superstardom. That's something he definitely needs to step up.
Let's not forget that Steve Kerr was booed by the Boston crowd, which probably has something to do with how he treated Jason Tatum on Team USA. But as you mentioned, I guess Kerr knew something when he was in camp with Tatum by throwing all those double teams at him and trying to put him off with Jaylen Brown not there. So I think the Warriors did well to really take advantage of that. I guess it's still worth asking the question because obviously the Warriors did beat the Celtics, but they ended up getting pumped by the Cavs. They were down 41 at the half, which is insane. Ended up losing by 19, so good on them. They still lost though, but I guess it's still worth asking the question: Are the Warriors legit in terms of the way they're starting the season? I guess what do you sort of make of their squad as a whole? Because there's a lot of really good depth on that team.
Yeah, I think they'll go a long way. I do back this team to go a long way. Just in saying that, like, we spoke about Jonathan Kuminga going to the bench, and since he's moved to the bench, he's had some outstanding performances. So if he can keep up this momentum, I guess going into the trade deadline, whether they trade him for another valuable asset or if they kind of hold him and be like, hey, like, you're going to be our sixth man, and this is what you're going to have to do. Buddy still coming off the bench. Like, do we pair up Buddy Hield and Jonathan Kuminga, or do we push up Buddy to the starting lineup, playing alongside Curry? I mean, just something to mention when you said down 41 at the half, the Cavaliers just had an unreal first half. They were shooting 66% from three to start off the game, and then I'll drop to 30% on the second half. The field goal, no, not a lot of difference. 43 field goals attempted in the first half, 42 in the second half. They just missed. The Warriors could have lost by a hell of a lot more. But I mean, even to start off the game, the Warriors missed 8 of 9 field goal attempts, and the Cavs ended up going on a 20-2 run. Shout out to the Cavs, man, 10-0. That's unreal. That is
There's
so
your
good to
mention
see.
for the week, Cavs. 10 and
Yeah.
0, the last unbeaten team left in the NBA. We were obviously last episode we discussed in depth about the Cavs, so probably no need to touch on the Cavs. But great to see them reach the 10 and 0 mark. First team since the great 15-16 Warriors to achieve that feat. I guess my take on the Warriors is that in the preseason I predicted them not to make the playoffs. I think I'm still not convinced that this Warriors team can go be maybe a top 4 or a top 6 team. I think they can definitely reach the play-in. I think that's how good this team is going to be, just because there's a lot of factors that they need to keep them competitive. One, Steph Curry needs to stay healthy the entire season, and he's already missed a few games this season with injury, and the Warriors played well without him. But they're going to need Curry throughout the rest of the way. Another guy, Andrew Wiggins, you talked about how good he's been on defense. Offensively, he's been really solid as well. He's averaging 15.8 points to start the season. He needs to sort of maintain that form and sort of recapture that form from when the Warriors won in the 22 season. So Andrew Wiggins needs to be that guy again. And I guess defensively, they're currently a top 5 defensive team. So, and I guess that's the part of this Warriors run that we don't really talk about because we know Draymond's there, but I guess the wings, as you mentioned previously, Kuminga, Moody, Wiggins, they've really helped out in that regard. So not fully convinced on the Warriors just yet, but hey, still a long way to go in the season. Which brings us to the Western Conference, and one team that has had a really strong start. They did suffer their first loss this week, but the Oklahoma City Thunder, and I feel like we haven't really touched on these guys so far this season, but I guess what are your sort of takeaways from what you've seen from OKC this season?
Just a solid team that gels together. I think that's the important. Like, they want to be out there, they want to win together. That's the most important thing. That coming out, like, Shai setting the example in terms of being a good leader, and that's kind of translating to the rest of that young team. And I'm really excited. I said this in a couple of episodes ago, but I'm really excited to see when Isaiah Hartenstein comes back to this team and see how he plugs in and brings his level of playmaking just to elevate this team. I think, yeah, this team is going to be fun to watch. And probably, I guess, the next up I'm going to call it for the next 5 years, these guys will be these guys' team.
They're already the best defensive team in the league by far. Like, per 100% possessions, they're allowing 97.32 points. The next best team is Golden State with 107.26, which means they're the best defensive team by 10 points, nearly 10 points, which is incredible when you consider that Hardenstein is sidelined at the moment. I guess one thing about the Thunder is Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, his sort of shot selection. We've known that he's really good from mid-range. That's sort of his patterned shot that he's had throughout his career. This season, it seems like he's taken more 3 points. He's sort of stepped out from behind the key and taking shots from deep, which is a very interesting development. I guess coaches have seen what the Boston Celtics have done with the 3-point shot, and they've sort of asked the OKC players, let's try and follow suit and chuck some threes up as well. And I think Shai was asked about it last week, asked by a reporter, "Oh, do you think? What do you have to say to those who talk about you taking more threes?" And he pretty much just replied, "I appreciate your concern," which is just pretty much all you need to say. I think Shai's not really bothered that he's doing that. But let's talk about their first loss this week. It was against the Denver Nuggets. We were concerned about the Nuggets heading into the season, or to start the season, but it seems like they've really picked things up behind a really good performance, not just from Jokic, but Russell Westbrook as well.
Yeah, I wasn't expecting it, man. Like that's the thing. He's had a great run over the last week or so, just in terms of his production and output. 29, 6 and 6. My question is with him moving to the starting lineup and how like this is when Jamal Murray's away. So we just got to take into consideration like is this sustainable? That's the main thing. Like Russ, we know he has his outbursts, but can he be a consistent performer? He doesn't need to be putting up 29 points a game. He needs to be, I don't know, 15 good points come, at the end of like the second, third maybe, or even help close out a game or even impact the team defensively. And we know his playmaker, we don't need to touch on that, but he just needs to impact the game in key ways and do it consistently to support Jokic.
Even so, now that Aaron Gordon's sidelined with an injury, he's out multiple weeks with the calf strain. He had a really strong start to the season, so that's a big loss there. And now it's going to look to a guy like Peyton Watson, one of the younger depth guys, to step up and start alongside Jokic and co. I will mention someone like Michael Porter Jr., who I thought hadn't been as strong as he could have been to start the season. He's really picked things up, and it really showed in that game against the Thunder. He was 6 from 10 from 3, which I think the more attempts he puts up and the more he hits at an efficient rate as well, that's really going to help out the Nuggets and help out Jokic, who's been pretty much carrying the load this season.
I think he's definitely putting his case in for MVP. Right off the back of what you said, like paving that path for MVP, especially with Jamal Murray out and these other guys kind of coming in and playing. But Jokic is that point guy. What 23, 20, and 16. So funny enough, I did a stat on this. I was just having a look. He has 9 triple doubles with 20 points, 15 plus rebounds, and 15 plus assists. And do you want to have a guess who second place is?
I'm going to guess it's Russ.
Yeah, that's Russ.
Yeah,
Russ has got, yeah, Russ has got 6. Yeah, Russ has got 6, man. Like that's unbelievable stuff. What he's doing, and if like I don't know, just a question that comes up, like, is this team better without Jamal Murray? Just off the back of what's been happening?
Nah, because I think they still need Murray, particularly when it comes to later in the season. Like we just talked about Russ and whether he can be sustainable, which I don't think he can, given how he's played the last few seasons. They sort of need Murray there as the main guard option. So yeah, I think they need everyone healthy, and I think the bigger loss is Aaron Gordon for me, if you're looking at Murray and Gordon. So, but the Nuggets, they're picking things up. We were concerned about them, but they're doing well at this point in time. Let's look to your game of the week, Rav, which was the Suns and the Mavs. I caught snippets of it, including that KD and Kyrie duel down the stretch, which is insane. Like two of the absolute best closers in the league. I guess what do you sort of make of your game of the week?
I think the reason why I picked this game is because it could have just gone either way. Bit of an anticlimactic finish the way it did, but the build up to it was just unbelievable. Another reason why I like this matchup is because the Suns with KD, Beal, and Book, and the Mavs with Kyrie, Luka, and Clay, like three guys on each team that could go off at any given moment, and we've known they have a history of closing as well. So it was meant to be a popcorn worthy night. So I'm glad it did. Kyrie shot 72% in the second half, man. That was unbelievable to see. And like you said, that little duel they had just going back and forth, that was really, really awesome. Like Phoenix started the game off hot, shooting 61% from three for 39 points, I think, in the first quarter, which was awesome. I think Tyus Jones is an important piece in this team. Just pushing the ball the way he does, like that's such a good addition. Like really gives the team depth. And like you mentioned, Ryan Dunn coming off a scratchy college season from three and producing like he is. That's yeah, loved it. And like one of the lineups they had, the Mavs had, they had Dinwiddie on the block with Clay, Luca. I think Najee Marshall and Daniel Gafford was on there. So that was a relatively small ball lineup. It was interesting to see that it was Spencer Dinwiddie. We know he's a roller coaster in terms of his up and downs. But that was really, really interesting to see. Doing a bit of analysing on this game, Katie's missed three, I think with about 24 seconds or something to go off the inbound, that when Neji Marshall was guarding him off the screen of Nurk, and Nurk kind of rolled straight away towards the bucket. Daniel Gafford lost a bit of possession there, I guess, lost a bit of space um, in terms of getting that ball. I get it that it went long and Bill had the little deflection, but Nurk was just there in a better position. So I guess Gafford needed to trust Neji Marshall a little more in terms of taking up that pickup, not really trying to deflect KD's shot. But man, they look like contenders. They look like contenders. I'm looking forward to the same. Yeah.
It's funny you bring up Nurkic because I wanted to talk about how Budenholzer has been using him as a stretch five, which in past seasons Nurkic has barely been a 3-point shooter. He's not really one. That's not really his style of play. Mike Budenholzer, as a coach, he loves guys who just chuck threes up. Like we've seen in the past when he was in Milwaukee, when he had Brook Lopez and Bobby Portis, to a lesser extent, and even Al Horford in his final year in Atlanta. Like the Al Horford you see now on the Celtics, that really developed back in Atlanta when he was under Mike Budenholzer. And I think Budenholzer's trying to do the same thing with Nurkic. And this week, Nurkic, a couple of the games this week, he's managed to make at least 2 threes. So it's slowly coming along. He's not going to be perfect. He'll have his nights where he's 0 from 3 or 0 from 4. But every now and then he'll have a 2 from 2 night or a 3 from 3, and that's going to be enough to help the Suns win these really close games, which I should mention, they're 5-0 in games decided by 4 points or less. So that sort of clutch gene and that mental toughness is particularly late in games, which I think was lacking last season. That's really shown up this year, and that's really helped with their really fast start.
Yeah. I mean, shout out to Nurk, man. Just on where he said it, he ended up being the hero of that game. Or hitting that free throw, or hitting the second
Out of
free
all
throw.
players playing in that game, it was Jusuf Nurkic who was the game winner. So good on Nurk there. The New Orleans Pelicans, I guess out of all the teams, they're probably the most unluckiest team right now in terms of the injury bug that they're experiencing. In their most recent game against the Magic, they had the following guys out: Zion Williamson, DeJounte Murray, CJ McCollum, Trey Murphy, Herb Jones, Jordan Hawkins, which is pretty much 6 key rotational guys slash starters, and they're pretty much all facing a stint on the sidelines. I think Zion, it was just announced that he's going to be out indefinitely with a hamstring strain. But I guess when you look to the Pelicans and who's going to have to step up in that regard, Brandon Ingram, it's all on him.
Yeah, calling him in, like BI has to step up. Whether like we're going to keep repeating ourselves, I guess, in a sense, because he just needs to keep stepping up. Either making him a valuable trade asset come trade deadline, or just under being that cornerstone of this team next to Zion. Do you reckon this is almost reminiscent of what the Memphis Grizzlies had to go through last year, where they put up 51 different lineups? I think.
Yeah, 50 plus lineups.
Yeah.
Yeah, probably. We're going to start hearing guys that we've never even heard of lining up. But I guess with Ingram and the support he's going to have, he's got Jose Alvarado, Brandon Boston Jr., who's a former Clipper, so shout out to him. Jeremiah Robinson Earl as well. So, I mean, they're probably not big names, but they're the guys who are going to have to contribute if New Orleans are going to stay competitive. Heading to Los Angeles, and this time the Lakers, JJ Redick this week, he benched D'Lo, partly because it was, not partly because, but there was a viral video of him slamming his chair after D'Lo took one of his ill-advised three-point shots, which seems to be a common theme when you're D'Angelo Russell. But JJ did respond saying that it wasn't because of the shot where he showed his frustration. It was sort of because of the series of plays leading up to that, and things just weren't going too well for LA. And he mentioned that for him basketball is an emotional and a passionate game to him. So, and sometimes you sort of lose control of that emotion, which is what you want from a coach. You want someone as passionate as JJ to be leading your team. So I'm not surprised that D'Lo ended up getting benched. He responded with 18 points against the Sixers, and the Lakers won that game. I'm going to throw it over to you to talk about Anthony Edwards and his fast start to the season, because I don't think I could have predicted him leading the league in made three-pointers to start the season.
Yeah, man, 50 made threes in his first 9 games behind Steph, and Steph because he's third at the moment, but Steph said those two in 2 separate seasons. And he's attempting them third most threes behind Jason Tatum and LaMelo Ball. And he's shooting at 48%, so why not? Keep chucking them up. It's just, watching these games and reading a few articles and on that, seems like a lot of these defenses are going underneath the screen, so allowing him to, take that quick shot. There's a quote that he said. It's kind of funny, Mike Conley telling him to get downhill, and he's like, if they're going under, I'm going to shoot. So it's just understandable. On the preseason he shot 13 threes on average across those 5 games, and I'm expecting him to continue to do so. And yeah, that's awesome. Just while we're on the Timberwolves, one thing I want to point out is shout out to Julius Randle, got his first block of the season against the Blazers. I think he went about 8 games without getting a block, so that was really interesting to see.
His campaign for the all-offensive team has started now, so good on him.
Oh yeah.
I do want to briefly mention before we move on completely, Domantas Sabonis had a perfect game, which I guess in baseball, pitchers have a perfect game, and in NFL, you have a perfect quarterback rating, 158.3. Sabonis probably had as perfect of a game as you could have had, a triple-double, 17, 11, and 13 against the Raptors with no misses and no turnovers. It's the first time that's ever happened. And I think for a guy who doesn't get as much love around the league, that there's your Domantas Sabonis mentioned there. So shout out to Sabonis there. It's probably worth mentioning that the whole thing regarding Drake and DeMar DeRozan, I think it was Vince Carter's jersey retirements, and Drake mentioned, well, if you put a DeMar DeRozan jersey up there, I'm going to climb up there and pull it down. I guess what do you sort of take away from that?
I think that's just salty, man. Just off what Kendrick said, y'all don't deserve D-Rose neither. I'm glad he came home. So, and yeah, that's just salty, man. Like, Drake and DeMar got along well while they were at Toronto, and it was all of a sudden flip teams. But also shout out to the Kings owner. Can't remember his name, but he was wearing that "Not Like Us" t-shirt. So yeah, big. I love that. That's awesome to see. Also, just before we jump onto the NBA Cup, just want to give a quick shout out to LeBron. Turns 40 in 6 weeks, and still being a monster. Averaging 23, 7, and 8 on 52% and 47% from three. Very efficient as well. So hopefully this longevity goes on, and got to appreciate him while he's here in the league, man.
Yeah, no, definitely, I 100% agree, and he's going to have to. I think Anthony Davis missed the game this week, and there might be occasions where Davis 80 is sidelined, so they're going to need LeBron to really help out. But yeah, shout out to the King, man. Well deserved as always, and looking forward to the big birthday bash in 6 weeks' time. 4-0, that should be good. This week, the NBA Cup officially starts. Group stage games taking place on Wednesday and Saturday, New Zealand time. We're just going to run through all of the groups competing in the NBA Cup. We'll start with the West A, and I guess we're just going to go through and maybe pick our winner from each one, and then after that add our 2 wild cards after that. So West A, we've got the Timberwolves, Clippers, Kings, Rockets, and Trailblazers. Rav, who's your winner coming out of that pool?
I'm going to back the Kings, man. I'm going to stick with him. How about you?
Yeah, I'm going to stick the Kings. We both picked the Kings to win the whole thing, so let's stick by that. West B, Thunder, Suns, which that's already a great pool there. Lakers, Jazz, and Spurs. Who's coming out of that pool?
I've gone Suns here.
I'm going to go Thunder to come out of the West B. West C, Nuggets, Mavs, Pelicans, Warriors, Grizzlies.
I'm going Mavs.
I'm going to go... Yeah, actually, I'll go Warriors, actually. Yeah, I think the Warriors will do quite well in the NBA Cup. East A, Knicks, Magic, 76ers, Nets, and Hornets. Who have you got there?
I've gone the Knicks. just because I've got them
I am
winning the
going.
chip, so I gotta back them, back the boys.
Yeah, I agree with you. I'm going to go for the Knicks. East B, which is probably the most open one. You look at where all these teams are: the Bucks, Pacers, Raptors, and Pistons.
I'm going Pacers. You are right; it is very open, just because how these guys are playing. But I'm going Pacers.
I'm going to go for a surprise. I'm going to go Pistons.
Hmm.
So, yeah, Cade Cunningham's going to come through there. East C, Celtics, Cavs, Bulls, Hawks, and Wizards. Celtics and Cavs in the same pool. Who have you got coming out?
I've got the Cavs on this one, expecting to
I am going
continue
to
the hot
go,
streak. Yeah.
yeah, I'm going to go Celtics in that one. And then who's your two wildcard teams to join the winners there?
I've actually gone the Clippers as one of my wildcard teams, or the West wildcard team, and the East have gone the Pistons.
Okay. In the West, I've gone Timberwolves, and then East B Pacers to come out. So those are my two wildcard teams. And then if you guys know, Rav and I picked the Kings to win the whole thing. So we probably don't need to go all the way to the finals. So yeah, that's pretty much our wrap of the NBA Cup there. But with group stage games starting up this week, which game have you highlighted as your game of the week from the NBA Cup?
Just like we mentioned earlier, it's just the Embiid's return to New York, so they Philly Sixers game. I just, a lot of speculation in preseason in terms of how Cat holds his own against Embiid. So yeah, really looking forward to how he plays against. Looking forward to that matchup. How about you?
Yeah, I'm going to go Suns Thunder, two of the best teams in the West going at it in the NBA Cup. That's my game of the week there. And that pretty much rounds things off for this episode. Quite a lot that we had to go through. If you're a 76ers fan, make sure you tune in or don't tune in if you don't want to hear about how poorly your team's been going. But Rav, as always, thank you so much for joining me this week. To everyone else, thanks for tuning in. Follow us on Instagram and TikTok. Listen to us on Spotify and or watch us on YouTube. But as always, we got next and Matiwa.